So I thought it'd be fun to talk about just different handle materials, and specifically these are going to be ones that I've actually used, and I'll show you examples of the knives I have too. So I'll just talk about the pros and cons basically, and just if there's anything odd about it, I'll talk about that too. There is one part in the end of the video that I'll add that because I've redone this video a few times. The last part is something I couldn't retake, so it is going to be like from the past a little bit. So, all right. So the first one I'm going to talk about is woods, and what I use is basically hardwoods and stabilized woods. And stabilized woods is basically a wood that's been pressurized with epoxy, so the wood gets saturated with it. If you buy it from somebody who's done it right, it'll be completely saturated with epoxy. So you'll grind it and there won't be any difference towards the center. So this is Amboina wood that I bought a while ago. I have have it set for certain projects that I haven't gotten to yet. An example of this is another type of Amboina wood. So this is the knife, and it cleans up really nice. You can do a lot of stuff with it. You don't have to worry about it like chipping as much as just regular wood, and it's not as easy for water to penetrate it. It's also protected against impacts and stuff like that. So in general, this is better than just normal wood when it is stabilized, and it's like great to work with too. So one of the things with Amboina, as you can see there's little voids. That's what happens with some woods. Talking about that, so when you work with wood, that's one of the things that's kind of you have to deal with. Since they're not man-made, they're very different. I mean, that's a plus too, because artistically or aesthetically, you'll never have the same knife basically, even though it's the same shape. You won't have the same handle, but then you will get voids. You will get like certain problems like cracks, things like that. Once you start grinding down, you'll find out sometimes that there's problems, and that's one of the difficulties with working with wood. Hardwoods, you can't really, these can't be stabilized just because they're so dense, and the epoxy can't really get through it. This here is Lignum Vitae, and in general, very nice, almost very similar to this to work with, just because of how dense it is. This is the knife. Here's an example of Lignum Vitae. And this specific piece I chose because of its curved grain, just because I knew I was going to use it for this handle. Another problem too when working with wood is, so for G10 and all that, you can use water to cool down your handle while you're grinding it and stuff like that, so the pins don't get that hot and it doesn't affect the epoxy. But with wood, you have to keep it dry, and basically because you don't want it to swell up, and then once you have your finished handle, it'll shrivel back up, and then you'll feel the edges on your tang. So you don't want that. You do have to grind it dry. And then another thing is, and this is kind of like allergies and stuff like that, there's a lot of exotic woods that you don't really know how your body's going to react to it, and that's one thing. These are pretty, in my opinion. I still use a respirator. Always use a respirator for anything that you're grinding, but these don't seem as dangerous as synthetic materials, at least to me. But still, regardless, always use a respirator. This particular Lignum Vitae, this particular wood, one of the things that I've noticed is after I grind it and all that stuff, I do wear a respirator, but after I'm done, this smells like kind of like potpourri, which is kind of weird. So that's kind of one of the things that I found that's kind of odd, and I'll try to mention something odd from everything I've used. But yeah, so you do get a lot of variety and and differences and a lot of things you can't control basically with wood.